Chapter 04. Veldanava's Pav. It has been a long time since I've felt this anticipation. The cycle of creation, so familiar to me, now brings with it a sense of excitement I haven't experienced in ages. I had gathered my siblings, the great true dragons, to share with them the news of an impending arrival. Rimmeru, the fifth true dragon. His birth, a marvel of creation, was to unfold within the void of my imaginary space, and the mere thought filled me with a mix of pride and cautious expectation. As I spoke to them, I described Rimmeru not just as another being like ourselves but as something entirely new, something that would embody the essence of nothingness itself. Unlike us, who personify parts of existence, Rimmeru would represent the void, the very concept of non-existence. I could see the uncertainty in their eyes, particularly in Velgrren's. Her initial hesitation was almost tangible, a subtle tightening of her jaw, a flicker of jealousy perhaps. Velzard, ever the cautious one, wore her distrust openly, her gaze narrowed as she considered my words. It pained me to see this reaction. I had hoped for enthusiasm, for joy at the prospect of a new sibling. But I knew my siblings well. In time, they would come to understand, to embrace Rimmeru as one of their own. Velgrren and Velzard would visit him, I instructed them, and bond with him as sisters should. Their reluctance was evident, but they eventually agreed, albeit with some reservations. Then there was Ddora, ever the eager and reckless one. He practically leapt at the chance to meet his new brother. His enthusiasm was infectious, but I had to temper it with a word of caution. Veldora's power was immense, and his aura, though impressive, was far too volatile. In Rimmeru's current state still unformed, fragile, such an overwhelming presence could be dangerous, even fatal. I explained this to him gently, but I could see the disappointment that clouded his eyes, even as he tried to hide it behind a forced smile. Once you master your power, I reassured him, you will meet him. And when that time comes, I have no doubt that you two will be close. Veldora nodded, but I could sense his frustration. He was so eager to prove himself, to be the big brother he imagined himself to be. But this was a matter of caution, of protecting what was to come. I could only hope that in time, Veldora would understand. As I looked at my siblings, I felt a surge of protectiveness, not just for Rimmeru, who was yet to be born, but for all of them. We were a family, after all, bound by the threads of creation and existence. Rimmeru would be different, yes, but he would also be a part of us, a new link in the chain that connected us all. And so, I waited, counting the days, months, and perhaps years until the moment Rimmeru would emerge. The anticipation was almost overwhelming, but I kept it in check, focusing instead on preparing the way for his arrival. Rimmeru would need time to grow, to develop his powers, and to understand his place in the world. And when he finally arrived, he would find himself surrounded by a family that, despite its initial hesitation, would love and protect him fiercely. The void, the essence of nothingness, was about to take form, and I would be there to welcome it, to guide it. The future was uncertain, but it was also filled with promise, and I couldn't wait to see what it held for all of us. Velgrren's Pav. I've always been proud, confident in my strength and position within our family. But when Veldanava told us about the new sibling, this Rimmeru who was to be born, I couldn't help but feel a pang of something unfamiliar, jealousy, perhaps. The way Veldanava spoke of him, with such reverence and excitement, stirred something in me. Why did he place so much importance on this new creation? What made Rimmeru so special? Veldanava's words stayed with me, echoing in my mind as I contemplated the future. Rimmeru would be different, he said, embodying the essence of nothingness. But what did that mean for the rest of us? For me, I agreed to visit him, to bond with him as a sister should, but doubt lingered in my heart. What if Rimmeru's arrival changed everything? What if Veldanava, who had always been our guide, our protector, turned his attention fully toward this new creation? And then there was Veldora. Always eager, always ready to charge ahead without thinking. I saw how his eyes lit up at the prospect of a new sibling, how he practically leapt at the chance to meet him. But Veldanava, ever cautious, reminded him of the need to control his power, to not endanger Rimmeru in his fragile state. I saw the disappointment in Veldora's eyes, the frustration. I felt it too, though for different reasons. Velzard's Pav. Caution has always been my nature. I weigh every decision, consider every possibility before I act. So when Veldanava told us about Rimmeru, about this new true dragon who would embody the void itself, my first instinct was mistrust. How could something so different from us be part of our family? What if this new sibling brought disruption, chaos? I listened carefully as Veldanava spoke, noting the excitement in his voice, the pride. It was clear that Rimmeru held a special place in his heart, even before he was born. But what did that mean for the rest of us? For the balance we had maintained for so long? I agreed to visit Rimmeru, to bond with him, but only because I trust Veldenava's judgment. Yet, my mind is filled with questions, doubts that I can't easily dismiss. Then there was Ddora. His eagerness to meet Rimmeru was almost naive, a childlike excitement that I hadn't seen in him for a long time. But Veldenava, ever the protector, cautioned him, reminding him of the dangers his uncontrolled power could pose. I could see the frustration in Veldora's eyes, and I felt a twinge of sympathy. We were all struggling with this, in our own ways. Veldora's pav. Excitement coursed through me the moment Veldenava mentioned a new sibling. Another true dragon. The idea of having a little brother, someone to share adventures with, someone who could understand me like no one else, it was thrilling. I could barely contain myself, wanting to rush off to meet him right then and there. But as always, Veldenava tempered my enthusiasm with his wisdom. He reminded me of the importance of controlling my power, of the danger my aura could pose to Rimmeru in his current state. It was frustrating. I wanted to be the first to greet my little brother, to show him the ropes, to be the big brother he could look up to. But Veldenava was right, I had to be careful. The last thing I wanted was to hurt Rimmeru, even unintentionally. As the days passed, I tried to focus on mastering my power, training harder than ever before. Every time I unleashed a storm or summoned a whirlwind, I thought of Rimmeru, of the day I would finally get to meet him. It wasn't easy. I've always been more about raw power than finesse, and controlling my aura was like trying to hold back a tidal wave. But I kept at it, driven by the thought of the future. I couldn't help but imagine what Rimmeru would be like. Veldenava described him as embodying nothingness, which sounded pretty mysterious and cool. Would he be serious like Velzard? Or maybe fiery like Velgrren? Part of me hoped he'd be a bit more fun, someone I could spar with and explore the world together. The idea of having a sibling who was totally different from us was intriguing, even if it made the others a bit uneasy. I wasn't worried, though after all, we're family. Kuhahaha, I burst out laughing, the thought of teaching Rimmeru all the best ways to cause trouble, have fun, filling my mind. Oh, we'd have a blast together. I could already picture it. The two of us soaring through the skies, stirring up the elements, and making our mark on the world. Veldenava might be all serious and wise, but someone had to show Rimmeru the fun side of being a true dragon, right? There was also the matter of Rudra. Veldenava had mentioned him briefly, something about Velgrren spending more time with him. I wasn't too sure what to think about that guy. From what I'd heard, he was powerful, maybe not on our level, but still pretty strong for a human. I couldn't help but wonder if Velgrren's interest in him was making her stronger or if it was a distraction. I'd hate to see her fall behind, especially with Rimmeru coming. We're supposed to be the pinnacle of strength, and I didn't want anyone thinking otherwise. Kuhahaha, well, it's not my problem. If Velgrren wants to spend her time with some human, that's on her. I've got more important things to focus on, like becoming the strongest big brother ever. I chuckled to myself, imagining Velgrren's annoyed expression if she knew what I was thinking. But all of that was secondary to my thoughts of Rimmeru. I knew I had to be patient, to wait until the time was right, but the waiting was the hardest part. I imagined all the things we'd do together once he was strong enough, the places we'd go, the battles we'd fight side by side. I just knew we'd get along. For now, I'll keep training, keep working on my control. Veldenava promised I'd get to meet Rimmeru soon, and I'm holding on to that. I'm going to be the best big brother ever, and when Rimmeru is ready, I'll be there to show him everything this world has to offer. Kuhahaha, just you wait, Rimmeru. We're going to have the time of our lives. Following Rimmeru's birth, Rimmeru's pav, we sat there, beneath the radiant canopy of Veldenava's garden on God's mountain, where every leaf seemed to shimmer with a divine glow, bathing the space in a serene luminescence. The air was rich with the scent of celestial flowers, a fragrance so pure it felt like it could cleanse the soul. Veldenava had just given Seal her own body, a form as radiant as her wisdom. And here I was, in my nascent state, a small European dragon with obsidian scales, edged with a soft, violet glow seeping between them. I nestled in Ciel's lap, her gentle yet firm grip reminding me of how fragile I still was. I could barely move, let alone fly or walk. Ciel's touch was tender but resolute, her protectiveness a silent vow that I wouldn't be harmed. We spoke of many things, mostly about what lay ahead. The future, uncertain as it was, began to take shape through our discussions. Veldanava had decided that Velgrren and Velzard would be permitted entry to the mountain but not Ddora. His uncontrolled aura and overwhelming power would be too dangerous for me, he had said, his voice carrying a tone of both caution and affection. As we sat, Veldanava's garden seemed to pulse with life, a silent witness to our plans. He told us he didn't intend to alter what had already happened in the world, but he had one request: save Lucia's soul when the time came. We reassured him, promising that when the moment was right, we would save both her and him. The relief that washed over him was almost palpable, and for the first time since I had met him, Veldanava looked genuinely at peace. He smiled, a gentle curve of his lips that spoke of hope and perhaps a hint of pride. He was happy, it seemed, to have a new little brother to care for. Veldanava's pav. As Rimmeru continues to grow, I find myself increasingly captivated by his development. Watching him stumble and struggle, then succeed in mastering some small new skill, brings a warmth to my heart that I didn't expect. He's still so small, so fragile in many ways, yet there's a strength within him that promises greatness. I often catch myself smiling at his antics, like the way he tries to take flight, only to tumble back to the ground, his little wings fluttering helplessly. It's endearing, and it makes me wonder how Lucia would react if she saw him like this. The thought makes me chuckle, though it also stirs a strange, almost irrational feeling within me. Would Lucia be so taken with Rimmeru that she'd ignore me entirely? It's a ridiculous notion, one that I quickly dismiss. Our bond is deeper than that, stronger than the simple charms of a newborn dragon. But still, the idea lingers, a quiet whisper that I can't quite shake. Perhaps it's just a sign of how much I've grown attached to Rimmeru, how much he's already become a part of my life. As days pass and Rimmeru grows, I can't help but notice the absence of Velzard and Velgrren. They promised to visit, to bond with their new sibling, but since his birth, they've been conspicuously absent. Each day I look toward the entrance of my garden, expecting to see them, but the path remains empty. It's starting to irritate me. No, perhaps it's more disappointment than irritation. I had hoped they would embrace Rimmeru as I have, that they would see in him what I do. But it seems their doubts and jealousy are stronger than their curiosity. I try to focus on Rimmeru instead, on guiding him through these early stages of life. He's beginning to grasp the basics of his powers, though it will be centuries before he's ready to step into the world on his own. For now, he remains here, under my protection, as I teach him to navigate his own potential. Each day, I see a little more of what he's capable of, and each day, my pride in him grows. But today, my thoughts are elsewhere. I've decided to visit Velgrren and find out why she hasn't come. She's been spending a great deal of time with that human, Ddora, and I need to see for myself how things are progressing. Perhaps she's distracted by him, lost in whatever bond they've formed. It's a concerning thought. Velgrren is strong, but attachments can weaken even the mightiest of us. When I arrived at Ddora's fortress, I was met with resistance mortal guards who foolishly thought they could keep me out. I quickly disabused them of that notion, letting them feel the weight of my power even in my human form. The look of terror in their eyes as they realized who they were dealing with was almost amusing, but I had little time for such trivialities. Velgrren appeared shortly after, her expression unreadable as she led me to Ddora. The man sat on his throne, exuding an air of arrogance that was almost palpable. I could see why he might intrigue Velgrren. There's a certain allure to confidence, to power that doesn't bow easily. But it concerned me. Ddora possesses power, yes, but it's his confidence in that power that could be his undoing. He's playing a dangerous game, one that Velgrren should be wary of. I only hope she doesn't let her attachment to him weaken her. She is strong, but she must remain vigilant. The world is changing, and those who do not adapt will be left behind. As I left the fortress, my mind was already turning back to Rimmeru. I can't help but worry about the future, about how my siblings' relationships with him will unfold. Will they eventually come to see him as I do, or will their doubts and fears create a rift that cannot be bridged? I almost laugh at myself, at how much I've come to care. This wasn't supposed to happen. Rimmeru was to be a new creation, an experiment in the possibilities of existence and nothingness. Yet here I am, worrying like a parent about his future, about his relationships, about how he'll grow. But I have no doubt that Rimmeru will grow into something truly extraordinary. And when that time comes, I will be there to see it, not just as his creator, but as his brother. Still, I will have a word with Velgrren. If nothing else, she should see for herself the wonder that is Rimmeru. She owes him that much as a sister, and I won't let her ignore that responsibility. Velgren's pav. I knew it was only a matter of time before Veldanava would come looking for me. He has always been the responsible one, the one who takes his duties as the eldest true dragon seriously. I respect him for it, of course, but there are times when his expectations weigh on me, like a mantle I never asked to wear. When he arrived at Rudra's fortress, I could sense him long before the guards even noticed his presence. Their feeble attempts to bar his entry were laughable, really. I almost pitied them for their ignorance trying to keep out a being like Veldanava. It was futile from the start. Still, I took my time getting to him. Not out of disrespect, but because I needed a moment to prepare myself. I knew why he was here, and I knew what he would say. As I approached, I saw him standing there, calm and composed as ever, a stark contrast to the chaos his mere presence had stirred among the humans. The sight of him brought a familiar twinge of guilt, a feeling I've been trying to suppress ever since Rimmeru was born. I know I should have visited the newborn, should have gone to see my new little brother as Veldanava had asked. But every time I thought about it, something in me resisted. Rimmeru, what a strange name for a true dragon, I remember thinking when Veldanava first told us about him. Unlike any of us, Veldanava had said, an embodiment of nothingness. I didn't know what to make of that. I still don't, but I do know that the idea of another sibling, another responsibility, just didn't sit well with me. It reminded me too much of Ddora, another bundle of reckless energy that needed constant supervision, another being whose antics would inevitably pull me away from what I truly wanted to do. I've already spent so much of my existence dealing with Veldora's unpredictability, and I'm not eager to repeat that experience. The thought of another sibling who might require that same level of attention, who might disrupt my time with Rudra, it frustrates me. I have something good here, something I've chosen for myself, and I don't want to lose it. Rudra is different. He's strong, confident, and dare I say it's someone I can actually respect. I enjoy being with him, watching him build his empire, seeing the fire in his eyes as he talks about his ambitions. It's a far cry from the chaos that Ddora brings or the weight of duty that Veldanava embodies. When I finally reached Veldanava, I tried to mask my hesitation with a smile, though I'm not sure how well I succeeded. He greeted me warmly, as he always does, but I could see the questions in his eyes. Why haven't you come to see Rimmeru? Why have you been so distant? It was all unspoken, yet clear as day. I didn't give him a chance to voice those questions aloud. Instead, I led him to Rudra's chamber, where he could meet the man I've chosen to spend my time with. I wondered if Veldanava could understand, if he could see why I'm drawn to Rudra. Perhaps he'd think it was a waste of time, that I should be focusing on our family instead. But the truth is, I'm tired of being defined by my role as a true dragon. I want something more, something different. As we entered the chamber, Rudra was there, seated on his throne, exuding the kind of power that most humans could only dream of. He met Veldanava's gaze without flinching, his confidence almost tangible. I admired that about Rudra, the way he stood tall even in the presence of someone as overwhelming as Veldanava. It was part of what drew me to him in the first place. But as I watched them interact, a part of me couldn't help but feel a pang of uncertainty. Veldanava's words echoed in my mind about duty, about family, about Rimmeru. I knew what he wanted from me, but I also knew what I wanted for myself. Couldn't they see that I needed this time with Rudra? That I wanted to build something of my own, away from the expectations and responsibilities that came with being a true dragon? Yet, as much as I wanted to focus on Rudra and the life I was carving out for myself, the thought of Rimmeru lingered. What was he like? Was he anything like Ddora, or was he truly different? The curiosity was there, a small spark that I tried to ignore, but it wouldn't fully extinguish. Maybe one day I'll go and see him, I thought to myself, if only to prove to Veldanava that I'm not shirking my responsibilities entirely. But not now. Right now, my place is here, with Rudra. The rest can wait. As Veldanava left, I could feel the weight of his expectations lingering in the air. I knew this wasn't over, that he'd continue to urge me to visit Rimmeru. And maybe, in time, I would. But for now, I pushed those thoughts aside and turned my attention back to Rudra. This was my choice, my path, and I wasn't ready to let go of it just yet. Third person POV. 100 years had passed since Rimmeru's birth, and the world continued to evolve, subtly shaped by the presence of the newborn true dragon. However, not all was tranquil, and tension simmered beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful era. In the skies, moving at sonic speed, a figure soared with unparalleled grace and power, a being whose very presence commanded reverence. This was the Star King Dragon, Veldanava. Tall and elegant, His black hair flowed like silk, contrasting sharply with his elaborate, divine robes. His sharp, distinguished features were framed by eyes that seemed to pierce through reality itself, revealing the deep wisdom and immense power that lay within. Veldenava's flight had a purpose. He was heading toward the Ice Continent, a frozen land located to the north of the Magic Continent, home to Guy Crimson's Frost Palace. The Ice Continent was a land of harsh beauty, inhabited only by powerful demons who served the demon Lord Guy and the Frost Dragon, Velzard. But just as he was about to reach his destination, something caught his attention, a powerful surge of energy, rippling through the very fabric of space. He abruptly stopped mid-flight, his eyes narrowing as he sensed the source of this disturbance. The aura was unmistakable, an overwhelming presence of anger and rage, emanating from God's mountain, the very heart of his domain. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized whose aura this was. The intensity of the energy was growing with each passing second, a storm brewing out of control. Veldenava's thoughts raced, his concern for what he might find compelling him to abandon his previous course and return to the mountain. Upon his return, Veldenava was greeted by a chaotic scene that starkly contrasted the serenity that usually defined his sacred grounds. The first thing he noticed was the human, Rudra, locked in fierce combat with Seal. Her form was ablaze with pure rage, her every movement charged with a fury that seemed impossible to quell. Veldenava's heart sank as he beheld Seal, once the calm, rational presence beside Rimmeru, now a force of destruction, driven by an anger he had never seen in her before. Velgrren, his sister, was nearby, struggling to maintain a barrier that contained the devastating energies unleashed by Ciel's wrath. Her face was tense, beads of sweat trailing down her brow as she fought to keep the situation from spiraling further out of control. Veldenava's gaze shifted to a woman standing beside Velgrren, a lady with platinum pink hair, her eyes reflecting the chaos unfolding before them. Veldenava recognized her as Lucia, but the usual warmth he associated with her presence was overshadowed by the turmoil around them. A short distance away, a mid-sized dragon lay unconscious on the ground. Rimuru. The sight of him, vulnerable and helpless, sent a pang of worry through Veldenava's heart. He had never seen Rimmeru in such a state, usually so full of potential and growing strength, now lying still, overwhelmed by whatever had triggered this disaster. Veldenava descended from the sky, his presence calming yet tinged with the weariness of a god burdened by the weight of his responsibilities. As his feet touched the ground, he took in the chaotic scene with a heavy sigh, a whisper escaping his lips, carrying the fatigue and exasperation he felt. "What in hell is this commotion?" he murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief and a touch of tiredness. He knew he needed to act quickly, but first, he needed answers. What had happened in his absence? What had driven Seal to this state, and how had things escalated to the point where even his sacred domain was threatened? Veldenava's mind raced, yet he remained calm, the divine ruler who had faced countless challenges before. But this was different. The chaos before him was not just a battle of power, it was a conflict of emotions, of bonds that had frayed to the breaking point. And now, it was up to him to restore order, to understand the depths of what had gone wrong, and to ensure that the delicate balance of the world and his family was not shattered beyond repair. To be continued.